Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's lecture. I will be talking about processing user input on the server and essentially creating email messages and sending email messages using SMTP client and system.web.mail or system.net.mail namespace. I'll also talk about the classes that would allow us work and manipulate files, and essentially today we'll finish up the contact form and make it completely functional. The objectives, as I said, of today's class are basically the main two components are being able to create an email message and being able to use ASP.NET Framework to send it over the internet, and also being able to manipulate and work with files in the ASP.NET Framework. And if you have experience with other frameworks and basically like the traditional ASP or PHP or JavaScript, you will probably appreciate the simplicity of the ASP.NET Framework in terms of allowing us to do these advanced applications and advanced work by very, very little ASP coding and ASP programming. Okay, before we start talking about processing the data at the server and sending email messages by gathering information from the users and sending this information to the to an email address, let's talk a little bit about the request validation. If you have an ASP.NET page and it has a text box and users would type things that look like HTML codes or JavaScript codes, the ASP.NET runtime throws an exception and basically it shows an error message. This is done because the ASP.NET runtime wants to prevent users from entering HTML code and JavaScript because they can potentially make the website not working efficiently or properly, and essentially change and alter the design of the website, that we might not want them to be allowed to do that. However, if you are very sure that you want to allow users enter HTML and JavaScript codes, you can disable request validation by setting validate request attribute in the add page directive to false. You can do that by writing in the add page directive where you have the title of the page, and for example, if the page uses C# as language, programming language, and so forth, you can use validate request equals false as an attribute. And by doing this, basically setting this attribute as false, you allow users to enter HTML codes without causing an error. Just you need to make sure that you do want to do this. Now, moving on, we have allowed users to interact with the web page, and we also validated their data that they entered in the web page. And now the user has pressed the submit button, and we want to see what how we can process this data. The data that is processed at the server, basically the input sources can be user controls, like the contact form that we created last week, and users type in information in. The data could come from database tables and database fields. It could be uploaded files that users upload on the server or on a web page, and so on and so forth. It could be text files, XML files, and they could come from web services. However, that's not the only flow of the data. The data can also go out of the system. Basically, users may want to send an email to the owner of the website, and you want also be able to automate the, for example, the comments that users would send or post on your website. And you want probably to make sure that programmatically you can check the comments, and let's say that you want to eliminate the comments that are not appropriate and so forth. So, or send them by an email. And today we'll talk a lot about sending email messages using ASP.NET. writing code that can send email messages can be very, very simple and straightforward using ASP.NET. Now, in other frameworks like PHP and the traditional ASP, this would have been difficult, and you would have needed to understand about sockets and all different sorts of processes that are involved within the creation and sending of an image, a message, or an email. But in the ASP.NET framework, the system.net.mail namespace contains useful classes that we can use to make email messages and send them. Essentially add the body of the message, basically create a new message, add addresses in the to CC and BCC fields, add subject matters to the email, add attachments, and of course send them. This table shows you the message email message classes that would allow you send email messages in the .NET application. The first class is mail message, and this class represents the message that you are going to send. It has several properties such as subject, body, and so forth. The subject property is the subject of the email. Its body contains the actual email message. The to CC and BCC properties can be set to the addresses of the email. You can even add an attachment collection to the body to the mail message, and basically send the message with all its attachments. The second class is mail address, and it represents a sender or receiver address that is used in the email. It has a few constructor overloads, and these enable you to set the email addresses and display names appropriately. There's the attachment class that's responsible for attaching files to a mail message class. When you construct an attachment instance, you can pass the name of the file that you want to add or you want to attach, and then use the add attachment, basically the add method of its attachment collection, or the mail messages attachment collection, to attach those file names. And of course, when you have all the body, subject, addresses, and attachments of an email message ready, you would like to send it, and you can send it by SMTP client. And this class, or SMTP client class, and this class is the one that's responsible to sending the actual message. By default, when an instance of this class is created, it checks the webconfig file to search for settings such as the SMTP server, the host names, and the different protocols and properties that, or settings that the SMTP server uses to send email messages. Sending an email message or writing a code that sends an email message is pretty easy. You can easily use the 4 classes that I showed you earlier, create an email message, and just simply send it. However, configuring your application and your network to basically support sending an email message that easily can be a little tricky. There are a couple of things that we need to keep in mind. One is that the machine that you're sending to use an email message out, it has to access an SMTP server. An SMTP server stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, and this is the protocol that is responsible for sending email messages and receiving email messages. So either your local machine should be the SMTP server, or you should have access to an SMTP server over the internet on your network. In most cases, we can easily use SMTP servers that we generally use in our email clients, for example, in Microsoft Outlook. So if you go into Microsoft Outlook in server settings and find what SMTP server you're using, or the Outlook uses to send email messages, you can simply use that in any other internet application, including your websites, your ASP.NET websites. However, if the site is being hosted on an external hosting party, we need to basically check this SMTP server that they provide, and for that we can contact the ISP provider or their administrator and learn about the SMTP server host that you're using, and also the setting of the SMTP server. Um, when we have all this information about SMTP server, we can configure the server globally in the web.config file in the system.net element. The system.net element is an element that we put it as a child of the configuration element, which is a root element in the web.config file. And within the system.net element, we basically create mail settings. So your web.config file would look like this. You would have a root element called configuration, and within that root element you have other things, but for setting up your network for email exchange, you type in system.net element. Within the system.net element, you create mail settings. Within the mail settings, you create SMTP element. The SMTP element uses a delivery method. Here, the delivery method is network. There are two delivery methods, network and specified folder location. And then you can use the from property, from attribute of this SMTP to be your name. It could also contain your email address. Remember that because in the XML backward slash is or backslash has special meanings, you should essentially not include the or also the brackets also have special meanings. You shouldn't include the brackets in your from attribute. Instead, you use ampersand LT semicolon for less than bracket, and then for greater than bracket you use ampersand GT semicolon that basically contains your email address within brackets. Now next is the network that you use within the or network delivery method that you use within your SMTP SMTP file, SMTP setting or SMTP element. And here we use the network delivery, so the network item or the network element will have a host, which will be my SMTP server. So it could be, instead of you.yourprovider.com, it would contain smtp.yourprovider.com. And this is basically the simplest way of setting up your SMTP setting for in the web config, so that you would be able to send an email. However, when we are using the network setting as a delivery method, the SMTP servers use different kinds of network settings to deliver the email messages. The one that I showed you in the last slide, it basically uses the network and assigns just the host name of SMTP server. Your host name may require username and password. So for example, if you're using the smtp.uhv.edu as your host name, the password that it requires is your password, your UHV password, or your email password, and the username would be your email address at UHV. So you could use the first network setting that I'm showing at the top, and the blue items are the ones that you should add to the network element. If your SMTP server needs different ports, you need to set the different ports if it's not using default ports for email. So, for example, if instead of the default port it uses the port number 437, then you put the number 437 within the port attribute of your network element. And of course, the SMTP might require SSL to be enabled to send email messages, basically encrypt them. And for the SSL encryption, you also, in the network element, you use enable SSL attribute and you set it to true. So for example, if you're using Gmail for sending the mail messages, you should use smtp.gmail.com for the host. You should use enabled SSL true. You should use user name, which is your email address, basically your username at gmail.com, and your password will be the actual password. Notice that you have to type your password, and it's case sensitive, and so that's how you design your or set your SMTP setting. While you're developing your website, you might not, for several reasons, use actual emailing back and forth, because if you do that, now testing how your email works, essentially, or how your website emails the information entered from the user, it actually creates actual email messages and sends it to your actual email address, clogging up, basically filling up your email address. Another issue with this is that you might not want to essentially wait all the way until the email goes through and gets to your email address, and so you would have to log into your email and read the emails and see how they look like and how they are being sent. So for these two reasons, ASP.NET provides another delivery method that basically allows you to, instead of using the network and sending the email messages actually in a real network over the internet, it lets you use another delivery method. Basically creates an email address and puts these email addresses into a specified pickup directory. So when you do that, these email messages will be essentially, or your SMTP server would essentially puts these email messages onto your computer in a directory location that you specified, and then they are .eml files that you could open them by any email client, such as Microsoft Mail or Windows Mail or Windows Live Mail. Now, to specify this specification and setting in the SMTP element in web config, instead of delivery method as network, you set it as specified pickup directory, and then you, instead of network element within SMTP element, you create a specified pickup directory element, and you assign its pickup directory location attribute to the location of the folder that you created on, for example, your C drive. Notice that you need to create this folder before you assign it to the pickup directory location here. It does not get created automatically. So first you create this directory and then assign it to the pickup directory location in web config, and then you can use your web config and essentially use your programs to send email messages. Now that we're here, I showed you what classes are used to send email messages and how they do that, and we talked about setting up the server for sending email messages, and now it's the time to write the program and make changes to our web config settings, and to basically enhance our contact forms that the users enter data and send this data to our email address. And next, I'll show you how we can actually use system.io namespace to read files, manipulate files, and essentially create a template file that you would use to send an email based on, and then just make changes to small parts of this template based on the data that the user has provided. Okay, here we are in the ASP.NET webpage or website that we created last week, and it was for the validation of the user input. So what it does is that when I run the website, a web form comes in. If I click submit, it would tell me that basically there are data parts that needs to be put in, and I can type in all the information that I need. So let's just type in the things, and you see the moment I type in my information, because I have a JavaScript client-side validation on the fly, even without going to the server, it takes out those parts essentially that needs to be entered. So you see the stars will go away. So I just put in some sort of address, telephone number, and then I just put in some sort of a comment, and so automatically it takes it out, and then I submit. And what I did in this code behind file, I tested on the submit button, and it would tell me that all is well. Basically, all the data has been entered. So if I go to the code behind, essentially, let's open the code behind file here. So my code behind file checks on the click of submit button, and if the page is valid, it enters the text all is well. Now what I want to do here is do a little bit more. Essentially, I want to send an email to myself saying that this had happened. So as you remember, we need to go and basically use the namespace net.mail system.net.mail, because as I told you, most of the functions and the functionalities that are helpful for us are in system.net.mail that would allow us to send email addresses. So you type the using keyword and system.net.mail and semicolon. So at this point in time, I have all my the information that I need to maintain. Next is to basically create the email message and send the email message out whenever the user essentially clicks on the button. In order to make the email basically sent, I need to go to the click button, the submit click button, and if you remember when I did last week, if the page was valid, I would put the text in the comment box that says all is well. So I want to make to create an email that would be sent out. So the first thing and the most important thing here to do is to go at the beginning of your ASP.NET C# code behind file, add the namespace. And so we did add the namespace system.net.mail. And when I add that namespace, I will have access to all the classes that are responsible for sending the mail. So the first class was responsible for creating an email message. So it was called the mail message. So we need to create an instance of a mail message, or essentially our email. That would be an object that is the email we are going to send. And I call this my message. And need to create the instance of this using new mail message class. Now at this point I have an object which is of the type or the class of an email message, and this object has several properties and attributes. So I can access them by putting a period after the name of this object. And so one of its attributes is its subject. So I want to give it a subject. So the subject I want to give it is hi. Okay, I'm just creating this email right now, and it just sends a test email. Once it's done and I know that it is sending an email, then I can add the information from the user or process the data from the user and create an email with that. Now next, I need to create a body for this email message. So the body of this email, let's put a body called test. So this is basically static text. I just want to make sure that this email message actually works. Next, I'll add the from address. So that would be my message.from equals that would be a new email address. So create a new mail address, and within this new mail address, the first option is to put the email. So the email would be, let's say, me@mymail.com, and then it would be the name of the sender. Okay, this is how I want this from address appear in the from address bar of the email message. Now, next I want to add the to, or it would be the recipient of this email. So my message dot to. So I click and I add this to collection. Now remember, from is just one address because one person sent this email, but to could be more than one item, and it could be from different types of email addresses and things like that. So this is a collection, and if you recall from the generics and collections, it's basically a array list of items, and so you can add to this list as you wish. So let's add to this list of recipients, and you could add mail addresses essentially, and each time you create a new mail address when you want to add to it, and then this new mail address would have an email address and then the display name. Again, it would be like this. And if you wanted to add another to, you could do that. Now let's add a BCC essentially. So dot BCC dot add. Again, BCC is again a new. Actually, BCC, well, we wouldn't see it. Let's add a CC recipient. Now let's assume that we create a new mail address, and within this new mail address, I'll send it to another recipient. And the name would be another name. So here what I did is that I created a mail message. Its subject is hi. It's in the body. I sent it basically says just test. It's just a test mail, and it's from me@mymail.com, and the name that appears is going to be Ali space T, and then the recipient of this is in the to section. There's a mail address, is me@mymail.com, and some name, and then the CC person who receives this carbon copy of this email would be someone else at mail.com, and the name that appears is going to be someone else. Now my email message is ready to be sent, and I need to send this mail message using an SMTP client. So I need to create an SMTP client basically from the class of SMTP client from system.net.mail, and I call it my SMTP client, and need to create a new instance of SMTP client. And now I have an SMTP client object ready, and this can basically simply send the message. Okay, so now the email is ready to be sent. All I need now is to set my network and my my computer ready to send this email. Notice here that needs to be done from the web.config. So we'll open the web.config file, and in the web.config you see that the configuration, which is a root element, already has a system.web in it, and it doesn't have the other element that was responsible for mail, and that would be system.net. So I need to create a system.net item. Within the system.net item, I need to create a mail settings item, and within the mail settings item, I configure my SMTP client. So you add an SMTP tag, an SMTP client, and I need to make sure that I create the delivery method for this SMTP, and the delivery is network, directory from IIS, and specified pickup directory. So I would use specified pickup directory because let's assume that already at this moment I don't have my network my host's SMTP settings, but in development place, the development type of my my process of creating this email. And as I said, this specified pickup directory, if I create a directory on my C drive or one of the hard drives, and this SMTP client that I created, it would send the email and copy it as an EML file or email file to this particular directory, and I can open them by a mail client. So within this SMTP, I need to specify what is the directory, and that would be the pickup directory location, and that in my hard drive is called temp mail. And this way my connections and everything is ready, so I can simply now test my website. So if everything's well, which it looks like it is, the file shows up, and I just fill these forms, because otherwise I would get an error. So then I click submit. Now it says all is well, which was fine. That means that this part of C# code ran, and it didn't give me any error, so that means that this part of the email setting up and sending has been also done. Now let's see if that happened. Let's go to the temp mail, and yes, you see that the email has been sent, and the email, if I open it in my mail client, it says it's from the name that I gave it and the email address. The subject is hi, and it's sent to me at mymail.com, and also to someone else who's not me at mail.com. That's their email addresses, and it's sent. The body says test, right? Now this wasn't really that good, because I didn't include any of the information that the user sent. It's just a test mail. Now it actually worked, because I know that now my my mail had been sent, and next is to modify the body of your message to adhere to the things that users had sent. So they had a name, they had an email address, they had a phone number, and then they had some comments. So what you could do is essentially go here, and for the subject, change it to comments from your website. And in the mail body, you need to change the mail body to tell you all the things that that the user sent. So you say that comments from, okay, comments from someone. Okay, now what you want to do is you want to add to this body the name of the person who sent the message. So you do my message body, you add to the body of this text the name of the person. Where did that name come from? It came from the name text box, which is essentially a text box, and the ID is name. So you go back to the default and you say name dot text. So let's just test this, see how it works. Let's run the website, and let's put this name and just the sudo name again. Okay, of course it's not correct. Now they match, and here the email was sent. Now let's go see if the email was actually sent properly. Yes, it says that comments from this person, right? Now I wanted this to essentially contain more information. So what I need to do is basically to add to this text a carriage return by adding to the text box \n, and then I want to include the email address of that person. So the body of my message will have added to it email plus need to go back to the default and see what is the name of the ID of this. It's called email address. So go back to the text box and say email address dot text. Okay, and also so add another return to it. Oh, actually I'm wrong. I'm typing HTML, so I need to put the tag for return and another tag for return for the second line. Okay, great. Next is my message that body would have added to it another set of text which says that the phone number is added, and the phone number I'll just add the home phone number. Let's say home phone here. Phone h.text plus a return, the HTML code or HTML tag for return, and again my message dot body, add to it business phone, add to it phone business dot text plus return, and also add the comments now, right? Those were the important parts. So body, comments, and I want to add these comments to the next line, so I put a return here and then add comments.text. Okay, great. Now let's test this. So again, to recap, I created the message subject, which is static. I created the message body, and the message body has several lines. The first line reads comments from, and then the name of the person from the text box, email of the person from their text box, phone number for home and business from their text box, and the comment from the text box. And you see I am actually creating this message body, basically hard coding this message body by reading from the text boxes and putting them in, and then manually hard coding the way that I want this data to be shown on the email message. And here's how it works. So let's call this Ali. I intentionally do that so that I'll get back from the server, and here I have it. So the email has been sent, and the things that I'll see in the email is basically everything looks like this. So something happened here that it's basically not reading HTML. So what I would need to do is go back to my C# and make this enters essentially a C# carriage return icon. That's actually a good thing I remember this. I made this mistake, so everybody knows that we are not typing in HTML, we are typing in C#. So, and let's run this new file now. Okay, so the email has been sent, all is well. Let's go back to my production, and there we are. The comment has been created, so comments from blah blah, email that, home address this, phone address that, and comments all as well. Now, yes, true, because I already made this all as well prior to the user's data, and so you need to do this at the end of your, because I already changed the comments text here, at the end of sending the email. Okay. And I here say that, thank you, your comments have been emailed. Let's run this one more time. Submit. Thank you, your comments have been emailed. And if I go to the email now, yes, I see that the comments have been sent and everything is fine. And now because I changed the comments after I sent the email, now the user's comments have been created here. Okay, all is well here up to this point, but the problem with it is that, first of all, my emails, basically, or the email that I created, is not necessarily formatted correctly. And the second problem that I see here is that my email, essentially the email of the body of the email, has been actually literally hard-coded. And I could basically format it using, for example, \t here, and then at the end of each of these, another \t, another \t, another \t, and so forth. So so this way I would have been essentially using C# to format all my text. Okay, rerun this. And submit the comments. Let's look at the new email. Some kind of formatted, basically. So I'll have all of these email and phone numbers basically formatted. Still, this email is missing because its length was smaller than the tab size. So to format that, for the email, you probably needed to add 2 tabs, basically. Let's send another email, and let's see how it looks like. Well, now everything is kind of tabbed and aligned and everything. So, but you get the point. This is basically hard-coding your information. So if one of these texts is longer, or you make changes to the way that you want your data to be represented, you have to make those changes into the text file, into your C# code behind file. That's not a convenient way to do it. So what I will show you next is essentially how to read a text file and basically type in the body of your email message within a text file, and then using this text file to basically which contains placeholders to send the email address, the email body, and just replace the placeholders with the data that comes from the user. Okay, so that would be our next topic. All right, so we created our first program that would send email messages by reading data from the user, validating them. If they are correct and appropriate, then it would send them via email. I did not show you how to actually send the actual email addresses. What I did, I used the delivery method to be not networked, but rather to be a pickup location, delivery pickup location. You can easily change that SMTP component, your SMTP tag or element that I showed you in webconfig, to use the network delivery method. And within the network tag, you specify the host, you specify the SMTP's information, like who's the SMTP host, basically smtp.mail.uhv.edu or something like that, and put your username and passwords and things like that. If I wanted to do that, I would have to show you my password because I have to type it. So, and also my username and stuff like that. And that can easily use your SMTP server to send email addresses, essentially. So the only difference is to change the SMTP of element of your web config, and nothing else would change in your code. But in this example, we just hard-coded the email message. As I said, it's not always the best solution to do this, because whenever you want to change the code, you have to change, or the email body, you have to change the code, and it's not really what you want to do. The .NET framework, on the other hand, comes with a few handy classes and methods that makes it very easy to work with files. The files, basically, or the file class, is within system.io namespace, and that enables you to read, write files, and add to files, create files, delete files, and move the files around, and a host of things that you could do to manipulate file systems. The system.io basically contains only static methods, basically on the file class, and therefore you don't have to create an instance of this class in your C# code. You could simply use the namespace as the instantiation of the class. So when you're creating a file, you basically can create or like system.io.file append all text. Or if you're deleting a file, you can say system.io.file delete, and then within delete you just type the name of the file you want deleted. When you're using C# though, remember that you need to use double backslashes in the path and the file name of your files. So for example, if your file is in C, instead of typing C:\/ name of the file, you put C:\/ name of the file. C# has a special character that allows you just to type one backslashes, essentially, and that is if you put before you put your text that contains the file path and file name, if you put an @, then C# regards that particular string as a simple string that backslash is essentially a backslash and doesn't have any special meaning for C# in that sense. So you could type in your files. So these are the classes and the methods that the file class has, and that enables you to work with files. The first method is append all text. That is, if a file does not exist, it creates the file. If it does exist, it adds the text of a specified string that is in a specific string. It puts it into at the end of that file. So for example, if you had the text like this is a line, and you wanted to add this at the end of your file, you just append all text, parentheses, and then you put your text string in quotation marks, or if it's in a string variable, you put the name of the string variable in it. You could copy a file from one location to another with the copy method. The delete method takes a specified file and deletes it from your hard drive or your drives. And the exists method checks to see if a particular file exists, and it returns a 0 or a 1 depending on whether it doesn't exist or does. Move file lets you move one file from another. It's basically like cutting and pasting. Read all text allows you to read the text from a specified file and put it in a string variable. Write all text writes the contents of a specific string into a file. If the file exists, it actually overwrites the target. So the difference between append all text and write all text is exactly that. If the file exists, append all text adds the text at the end of the file. Write all text completely deletes things that are inside the file and writes a brand new file from scratch. Now here, I'd like to show you basically to add to create a text file, put placeholders in a text file, and then send the message by reading a text file and making it the body of our text or our email message, and then replace the placeholders, like for example the part that's for the name, the part that's for the email address, with the user input from the web form. So to do this, we'll go back to our web developer, and the Microsoft Visual Web Developer, I will add to this website a new folder called app_data, and within that I create a text file called contact form.txt. So in the Solution Explorer, right-click on the website and then add ASP.NET folder, and then click on app data folder, and within the app data folder add a new item by right-clicking on it, and let's add a text file, and let's name this text file contact form.txt. So here is my contact form.txt. What I need to do is essentially to enter a text that would be my my email message, and what I will do is I'll also put placeholders, or essentially special characters that augment the placeholder, and then later on in my C# code I search for these particular placeholders and I replace them with the text that user inputted. So the text says, "Hi there, the user has left you the following comments with their information. Name." And these special placeholders can basically be any kind of symbol, just visually for me to be able to kind of look at them and see that they're not actually real text. The reason for this special symbols is that if I just put an email and then later on I'm looking for an email and replacing it, it would also replace this email, which is actually a part of the text, whereas this email between these hash signs is not actually the word email. It's just a placeholder that I can look for it in my code much easier and replace it. So their home phone is home phone, and their business phone is business phone, and the comments that they provided is essentially comments. Okay, here's here's the way that my email would look like when I send it, and I save this text file. Now I need to go to my code behind of the ASP.NET file and add to my my file the namespace system.io. So let's go to the code behind file and then add using system.io. So right now I have access to the file manipulation classes. Now remember, in my comment box, I added the information that said that everything was well and the email was sent. So what I would like to do is not to put it in the comment box. I'd like to remove the comment box, essentially visually, and but basically put the text, the confirmation text, in a sort of label or in a placeholder that that puts back or returns back the confirmation text that the email was sent. So the next time when the user logs in and sees the contact form, it is going to be visible if they have not sent the email. If the moment they click, then I make the comment box invisible and the contact form visible. So the contact form is essentially visible, and if you go to the default.asp.x, you'll see that the contact form is essentially a table. And let's go to source, and so the contact form is a table. Okay? Now, at the end of this table, I'll add a ASP.label, and this ASP.label essentially will have an ID, and its ID would be message. It'll have a run at attribute, which would be server, and it'll also have a text, which would be thank you, your message has been sent. And I don't want it to show up on my website. You see, if I leave it like that and I run my website, you see that the message that I'm showing the user, thank you, your message has been sent, is here. I wanted to make it invisible. So for that, I would make the visibility attribute as false. So when I run this page, the text, the confirmation text, is not here. It's not visible, and the form is visible. So the code that I'm writing essentially would read a file that is my text file, and then puts its contents into the mail body, essentially the email that would be the body of my mail message, and then it would replace the placeholders with the input that came from the user. So let's see how that works. Let's go to the C code behind file, and let's go to the submit click. Now I have already created a new mail message, and I have created the subject for it, but the body of this mail message is essentially hard-coded. So I get rid of that. Now, let's create a string and call it file name. And this file name would be the name of my contact form file, but it should come from the full path from the server. So what I need to do is to put in the string file name the actual path of this file on the server itself, right? So I can't just type in appdata dot text and context.text, because if it's loaded into a different server, it would return a different actual physical location. So you use server map path method, and within that method you put the root directory of your website, app.data, which is where your file is located, and contact form.txt is the name of the file. Now that you have that, you create another string and call it the mail body. And this would be the string that is read from the text. So you use file.read all text of a file, and that file is file name. So what you did is that you created a string and you put the actual path of your file with its file name into that string, and then you read it with the read all text method of the file class. And remember, I didn't need to create an instance of this class because file class has essentially static methods. I could also create a file like the mail message body that you created up here. You could create an actual file and give it an actual object name and then use it and call it, but for the methods that are within file, you don't have to do it. So anyway, you created the string of the body of your string. Next is, if you look at the body, mail body string, it would read entire text file from app data, which looks something like this. Now you need to replace these placeholders with the actual data from the user, and that would be easy to do. So this mail body string actually does have a replace method, and it would replace the specific strings within the mail body text with the text that you want to replace. So your mail body will be equal to mail body dot replace. Now you want to tell it replace what with what. So you want to replace this text essentially with the name of the user, which was in the name object or name text box dot text of the name text box. So here's exactly what happened. So you replace within the mail body this content with this content. Okay. Same thing. So what I did, I already replaced the name. Now let's replace the email with the user's email address. So you do mail body equals mail body dot replace email with email address dot text. So that's the text of the email address text box. You replace mail body quotation. What are we replacing next? Home phone. Okay, I just copy and paste these things here just to avoid typos, and replace it phone.h dot text. And these are essentially my server control IDs that I'm basically using here. Mail body equals mail body dot replace. Now next I'm replacing BizPhone placeholder. Oops. Yeah, it's in ASP.NET here. Quotation phone b dot text, so the text of phone b text box. And finally make the copy of or replace the comments section, which is this, with comments dot text. Okay, so now my mail body is an entire string that contains the actual data from the user, which is basically which replaced the placeholders, and I'm ready to send it. And all I can do is essentially put this into the mail body. My message dot body will be the mail body, which is the string I just created, and then I can simply just go ahead and send it. Now I can get rid of this confirmation code that was hard-coded also, and then make my table invisible and make my message box or the label visible. Now let's go back to the default. You see the default ASP.NET website, it has a ASP label, which is a label with ID message, and its visibility is false. Now I need to go and give an ID to my table. So let's make this table to run at server, and let's give this an ID, which is, let's call it my table. Okay, so let's save this and let's go back to the C# code behind file, and let's make the visibility of my table false and the visibility of the message, which was the label ID, true. Okay, now if I run this page, you'll see that the page loads and the table is visible because I haven't set its visibility as false, and as you see, the label is invisible. Because I set the visibility false on the server, if I look at the page source, at the end of the page, it's not rendered at all. So, see at the end of the table, the tag for that label has not been rendered because its visibility is set as false. And therefore, the ASP.NET Runtime does not create HTML code for it. Now let's type in our information. And let's put comments, and so forth. And let's submit this data. So the data is submitted, and the C# made the table invisible and made the text box or the label visible. If you look at the source code for this file, now you see the table is not rendered. And essentially what is rendered is the message, which is basically rendered in a span element that says thank you, your message has been sent. And the table element is not, it's completely invisible, so the HTML code is not it's not created for it. And what happened to my email? Now if I close this and I go to my temporary mail and I look at this message that has been sent, now the message has been, the body of the text has come from a text box text file that I created, and it has the static text that I made in, and then it has the dynamic text that I just replaced. So the replacement of the placeholders with the data that user inputs, and these are the 3-line comments that I just put as the comment boxes. Again, I'll go back to the text file for contact form. The reason that I did this augmentation of these placeholders basically with special characters is that it is very unlikely that this kind of pattern would appear in the text essentially as a valid text, and it makes it easier to compare against, in my C# file, to compare against this kind of special type of text that I personally used to create that text box, and then replace them with their appropriate information coming from the web form. And finally, by allowing the table to become visible and invisible, putting it at server, so it runs at server, and giving it an ID, I could potentially make its visibility false and make the visibility of my message label true. So with one line of code, I can essentially give the confirmation that the user required, and not having to put that confirmation in the text box of that contact form, so that the user wouldn't accidentally submit the button twice and therefore resubmit all the information to my email. Okay, so this is all about processing user data and working on the server and creating, essentially getting user input and sending information out using email. Um, I will close this lecture, and this will be the last formal lecture. Essentially, in the final, you will see the topics that we have covered so far. And I'm going to a conference next week. I will try to put online before I leave some information about Ajax technologies. And if I put the information about Ajax technologies, it will not be included in the final exam, as we discussed in the online meeting. However, you could just study it and use it if I have time and I can create it, because that was what we kind of agreed upon. And also you can use the last week of the classes to study for the finals. And as we talked about, it will be on the Sunday and Monday of the first week of December. I believe it's the 5th and 6th. And you could use this time to work on your project also. So that being said, I'll close up the lecture for today, and I will see you for the finals. Actually, I'll put the finals online on time, so you could go on and get access. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me, and I will do my best. I will do my best to accommodate all the questions and concerns within a reasonable amount of time and resources. So I wish you good luck for the final exam, and I hope that everybody does their best and everybody will be satisfied and happy with the outcome of this class. Thank you very much. Good luck.